Welcome to Season 6 of the RAG podcast. Now, for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth, and this show has been around since early 2019. And every week, we are obsessed with finding out how the world's most successful and innovative recruitment agencies and their founders have got to where they are today. In Season 6, alongside the founder's story and the inside information of that business, I also want to focus on the reality of today's economy. There is so much noise about this inevitable recession that we find ourselves in right now. And where it's going to go, is it really having an impact on the recruitment sector? Are they seeing any change in job flow? Are they seeing any change in candidate control or activity? What is going on? I want to find out. So every single week, I want to forget the propaganda, forget the noise. I'm going to speak to a real life recruitment owner and find out what is going on in their business. I will bring it to you every single Wednesday from 12 o'clock across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. On this week's episode of the RAG podcast, I am super excited to be joined for the third time by Elliot Dell. Elliot is the CEO of Salt. Salt is a global leading digital recruitment agency with over 400 people across 20 offices globally. Now, Elliot joined me on the RAG in person in 2019, just before the pandemic. At that point, there were 220 people across 9 offices. So in 3.5 years, he has effectively doubled the business. Now, dealing with the global pandemic and doing that has been a very interesting journey. In this episode, we talked about the reality of the boom post-COVID, which obviously helped, the locations he's gone to, the introduction of an academy for hiring trainees now and really growing the organization through that. And we talked about the challenges of that and the current economy, the reality of a global office base, 20 offices in every continent, and the different regions suffering with different issues due to the economic downturn. Elliot was, as always, he's super honest, very passionate about the business, wants to take the business to 1,000 people in the next few years. And for anyone who's looking to grow a business of headcount with significant size, I think you should be listening to this show. But also, he talks about protecting your time as a founder, as a leader, how he talks about his routine and how he still works in isolation a lot of the time, how he finds time for his family, for the gym, for his own self-care. And it was really refreshing to talk. You know, high growth doesn't necessarily mean burning yourself at both ends. You can find time for everything else too. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. Without further ado, Elliot, welcome back to the RAG podcast.
Thank you, Sean. It's my hat trick now.
Yeah, you're one of only a few people who've been on the show 3 times. I think you and Lloyd Gordon would be the only. It might only be you two, actually. So you should be privileged. But it's great to have you on. Always a pleasure to spend some time together. We've just been chatting before the show, and I want to go back to the end of the first episode back in 2019. Before I do, for anyone who doesn't know you, hasn't listened to any of that stuff, give us the bird's eye view of you and the business today. Numbers, headcount, locations, that kind of stuff, and then we'll go back to the story.
Yeah, so those that don't know me, Elliot Dell, CEO of Salt Recruitment Group. As we stand today, we are 20 offices across the world, so we're on 6 continents now, having recently acquired a business in Brazil, which was the last continent that we wanted to set foot on. So offices now in Toronto, Austin, New York, Rio, Sao Paulo, London, Manchester, Bristol, Reading, Amsterdam, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, and Wellington.
Wow, that is truly global. Truly global. And how many people?
Circa 400 staff at the moment, just under 100 million turnover last year, and peaked at about 1,100 freelancers working for Salt across the world last year as well.
Amazing. When we look back at that, so at the end of 2019, I interviewed you in November 2019. We didn't know the pandemic was coming. It was when I used to meet people in real life, which was a long time ago. You had 220 people across, I think, 9 offices. So yeah, if you look at that 3.5 year period, you've ultimately pretty much doubled the business. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And then, when we caught up during the pandemic, I think what with furloughs and a few exits here and there, I think we probably bottomed out at about maybe 180, 190 staff during that period. I think there's about 25, 30 headcount we dipped on, but managed to sustain and retain all of the office footprints. And I think it was the multitude of office footprints that allowed us to really excel as the world started getting busier again. It was multiple P&Ls, multiple leaders to grow through and account develop across our various global customers. So look, we're happy with where we got through during the pandemic, with where we're at now, but always ambitious to keep moving forward, to keep growing.
Non-stop. So if we go back to that period then, and again, we're probably going over a bit of ground. We did it because we did a mini episode in the RAG report, which was when I did a daily show in the first lockdown, right? But remind us how you dealt with that period, because it was crazy for us all. But when you got that many people in that many locations, what was a day like for you personally at that point?
So at that point, myself and my chairman were speaking, countless times per day, early morning, late nights, checking in with all of the various leadership teams across the locations as well each day. In fact, some of that stuff has continued now. So I was doing a daily scrum with my leadership team at 10 o'clock every day. Yes, to find out what's going on, but more for all of our mental health and all of our sanity and all of our motivation levels, just to be with each other, hand by hand, side by side, sharing what was going on, thoughts, experiences, even if, what have you watched on Netflix, last night to entertain you and keep going, the latest exercise fads and crazes that everyone was into at that time as well, recipe recommendations. So look, there was a lot of synergy, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of talking. I'd say a lot of that has continued afterwards. But, the key thing was communication. It was talk, not make decisions too quickly, not act impulsively, feel what decision is right, but talk it through, look at the data, share thoughts and experiences, listen to all the various levels of your leadership team, and, hopefully from that, make the best decisions.
And being so global, you must have had to, like you say, you'd have had to be online a lot of the early and late shifts. There would have been a lot of interesting time zones for you to cater for.
Yeah, it would have been. Look, we've got Sean and Jackie that run the APAC region for us. They run that business day to day, and Paul and I would check in with those guys. We would share thoughts and experiences, what we were experiencing across the Americas and EMEA, what they were experiencing over in APAC. So just us, continuing to share what was going on, and then into the smaller regions, catching up with the Middle East as an isolated region, as an example, catching up with South Africa to see what was going on over there, catching up with James over in New York to find out what was going on over in the States. It was just, let's say, constant communication, constant catch-ups to see what was going on. Were the hours much different? No, I wouldn't say it was working ridiculous hours. I think it was just being regular. It's the consistency of the catch-ups. It's the consistency of doing everything every day to maintain those communication levels.
Rather than intensity. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I've got like 3 things that are running through my mind that I wanted to discuss with you. Like there'll be loads more as well, but I just want to tell you now, right? The 3 things that were on my agenda today was, how has Salt changed through that period as a business in terms of the way you operate? Like, people being forced back to the office a lot across our sector. I'm interested to know what was pre-pandemic Salt compared to now. I also want to know how you launch an offer. Like, how do you decide on a location? Like, what's the process that because you've got such interesting locations in EMEA and in South America and stuff. I think a lot of people are trying to grow internationally. We've recently done it in South Africa, similar way to you. So let's talk a bit about that. And then I also want to talk about the reality of the economy today. Like, what are you actually seeing in what we're talking about, late April 2023, recession conversation, slowing down of business. So they're the 3 things I want to bring to the table, and you can add anything else. So if we go back to the first one and we look at the difference in the business, in the way you operate, what was the business like going into the pandemic? Was it 5 days a week? How was it ran pre-pandemic as an organization?
Yeah, so I guess we'd been on a journey probably from, 2016, 2017, to how can the workplace be more accommodating? How can it be more flexible? Our inclusion journey dates back even before that. 2013, we hired our first diversity manager, and we really started looking at that inclusion in the workplace. 2016, we added on our own global mindfulness program. We started attending lots of events as a leadership team around, the flexible workplace, the 4-day week, flexible working contracts. So I guess there was a nice sort of multi-year build-up period to that. We started introducing at various levels of our career ladders, a day working from home a week, 2 days working from home a week, etc. And just starting to be a bit more flexible as an organization. When the pandemic struck, obviously we had to flip that way of working overnight. So we were all forced into it, but we were so impressed by the way our staff adapted. We do have a very strong global operating model as a business in terms of, what are the rules of the game? What is our 4-4-2? What is the system and the formation that we play to? And we're very consistent in that, in terms of our daily scrums, our weekly sales meetings, our quarterly launches, our annual launches, everything kind of pyramids in terms of how we run the business.
Yeah.
So we were very impressed as to how people adapted working from home. There was a high level of trust and integrity in terms of what everyone was doing. So it almost just flipped the model overnight, that suddenly we did have a remote, flexible way of working. So we didn't rush any decisions. I saw quite a few videos from other businesses very early on in the pandemic, companies saying, we will never return to the office. We are getting rid of all of our offices everywhere. And it was very premature. And obviously a lot of those decisions have since been rescinded. And of course, there's a big rush from many businesses now to get back into the office. Our philosophy was, from I guess a mental health and social responsibility point of view, to be fully remote. I think can be challenging. I know many businesses do it successfully, and I know you speak about yourself in terms of how you've grown out your business as well. I think with a recruitment model, when your purpose is to grow a location and have 40, 50, 60, 70 people in a location, which is what we do, which is our mission with all of our locations, I think there is a social responsibility 100%. There to have a home for people to go to, because not all of us are privileged with quiet places where we can sit here and do a podcast, or we can sit here and make some video calls. And especially the guys that live in a city, whether they're in London or Joburg or New York, wherever they may be, they're lucky to have more than 1,000 square foot to kind of throw a laptop around, and they may have pets or young children or noisy neighbors, noisy flatmates, whatever it may be. So we've set in stone a purpose for us to have these physical locations for people to go to. So that was a really big thing that that we drew through from the pandemic, and something that we have continued with today. It kickstarted our nationalization, if you like, of our UK business. Prior to the pandemic, we just had a London office. A few people during the pandemic moved around to various locations. We had a couple of lads move back to Bristol. We had a couple of people move back up to the northwest. So we said, well, hey, why don't we start building hubs around staff that we've already got in locations where we know there's good universities, there's thriving towns, and we can build upon that as well. So,
I know. It's John in Manchester, isn't it? He reached out to me, and you come over from Asia or whatever. What would what is the, without going into this, because it is a very common conversation over the last couple of years, but just to give anyone any insight, what is the way, how do you make it work for you now then? Is it 2 and 3 model? Is it a 4 and 1 model? What's the methodology that offices abide by that is working for you?
Mm-hmm. So coming at the pandemic, we created 3 different ways. So you have an office-based contract where there's a minimum of 2 days in the office in the UK, as an example. In the US and the Middle East, they do more 3s, same in South Africa. There's a fully remote contract as well. So, people can be attached to a certain region in terms of where they want to do their recruitment, but they can be, fully remote. And within that, there's a sort of responsibility to at least pop in to the office to meet your manager once a month. So, we wanted people to have, different ways of doing things. We didn't want to pigeonhole people. We didn't want to come in and say everyone has to come back into the office or everyone is fully remote. So, let's say we're giving people the hybrid model.
Wicked. So, Yeah, and it makes. I mean, I think it is about. You mentioned all those people with the noisy flatmates and all that. I mean, it's so true, especially in your early 20s. Do you really want to be at home all day? But there are people like my life now. I'm 37 soon. I've got a baby on the way. I've got 2 stepkids. I've got 2 dogs. I live in Sheffield. I've tried having an office in town, and it's just not. There's no point. Like I'm building a garden office. I've got one in the house. This is my baby's room, by the way. This is the nursery now, so I'm being kicked out of the house. And right now, you might hear the odd bang. The builders are turning my garage into my new office, and it just works for me at my age and my life. So there's going to be people in recruitment that are similar, that have got that setup, that they're self starters. They can get on with it. But like you say, if you pigeonhole them into an office, you might lose them. Equally, if you make everyone remote, you might lose them. So it sounds like you've got a good balance there. It's interesting. What when it comes to the locations, then, because you've expanded pretty rapidly, like to go from 9 to 20 or whatever in that period of time. Like, how are you doing this? Like, what's the process around? How do you know when you need a new location, and how do you go about finding a place? And talk us through a high level version of what you would do with a new location.
Yeah, look, we are very customer led in terms of how we adapt our products and services within Salt. When there was the revolution of the embedded model, as an example, we adapted to customer demand and the types of recruitment solutions that they were looking at. I think when it comes to office locations, we're always looking at the movement of people. We're always looking at emerging markets, and we're always looking at where does some of our international offices hire staff from as well. So as an example, if you look at Dubai, 65-70% of the placements are relocations. So, in the Middle East, certainly now with the emergence of Saudi as a big hirer of that region of international staff, but Dubai, as we were talking about earlier offline, 70% of the Dubai population are expats. They are people that have relocated from other countries. So when you look at the fact that they're not just taking people from the UK or Germany, they're taking a lot of people from South America as well, and South Africans. So what we've done is we've looked at that people movement trend. So when we set up in the Middle East, we immediately started seeing the movement of people from South Africa up to the Middle East. So that caught our eye, and we started looking at the region. We started looking at businesses coming out of there. Obviously, it's English speaking as well. So like with the decision to set up in Australia and merge with the business in New Zealand, it just kind of made sense. Same with South Americans as well. The amount of South American creative and digital talent that flocks into the US and flocks into the Middle East and even over to Asia as well is very high. So for us, again, looking at the LATAM region made sense to us commercially. Also as well, when you look at the currency conversions, it's an obvious choice to stick with US dollars, pounds and euros, because that's where you're going to make your highest net fees. Yeah, makes absolute sense. But when you start to think about the future of talent and movement of people across the world, you've got to have your eye on the emerging markets. You've got to be looking at South America, South Africa, India, some of the lower cost regions in Asia as well, because we are a global economy. We can't move away from that. And there's going to be more and more augmented staffing models, remote working staffing models. And for us, it's about building that future of talent and building a truly global database.
So let's take Argentina or Brazil. How do you actually go about doing it though? Like, because you're in the UK, your business is global, but what steps do you go through to open in a place like that? What did you have to do?
So the initiation, I guess, with Brazil. So a chap that was starting a recruitment business in South America actually reached out to me just after the Rio Olympics in 2016, and he asked if I'd be his mentor to help him set this business up. He was actually setting it up out of Chile. He's actually gone on to now sell that business. So I'd like to give myself a little pat for helping him build and sell that business. He knows who he is if he listens to this. So that gave me some working knowledge, if you like, of that region. It allowed me to get to know what was going on economically, politically, the types of customers down there. I think with some of the other regions, we've gone in a little bit blind. Like when we went to Australia, we expected to see UK, US brands everywhere, but it wasn't. It was very nationalized brands there. It was very different customers down there. So we were able to feel that and see that very early on with Brazil as an example. In fact, the business we ended up merging with down there was only one international client on there that I would say, is prevalent in the other countries that we are. Everything else was kind of household Brazilian names. So, there's a warming up period, no different to when you're recruiting a job. Whenever anyone speaks to me about mergers and acquisitions or office setups, I say it's no different to how you build out a universe that you recruit within. You get to know people within that market, you get to know how that market plays, the customers that hire within that region, the main talent in that region, and you take it from there. So the due diligence side of it, yes, you have to look, slightly more into things like, economic trends and cost of living and cost of office setup, etc. But the getting to know period is just like a recruiter gets to know their market. So it's like a dating period. You go into one of these locations because you've spotted a trend there, whether it's movement of people or movement of customers, speaking to a number of people, 10, 20, 25 different business owners and leaders out there. And from that, you can ascertain as to whether you think it will be a good move for you.
And do you always look like, is the preferred model to get a local to be the first hire, or do you like to send British people over to keep the culture? Like, because I've seen companies do different things.
Yeah, different companies do different things. You look at what S3 did over the years, who had some amazing successes in new regions, relocating top billers from their UK offices. But then you have seen a trend of a more localization now of those businesses, where obviously they've nurtured locals and then brought them through. My ideal is actually a merger or acquisition into a region where you've got a decade of trading history. You've got 10s, 20s, maybe even hundreds of contract runners. So you've got some sustainable revenue. You've got local knowledge, and you can really come to that business, bring all your global experience, bring global customer lists, a global database, a global way of thinking and doing things, but then really work with a business owner that knows that region, that is fully invested into that business and can grow out for there. So that's actually my ideal model. I think from that sort of values and culture point of view, I think if you're merging in with the right people, then you're going to meet on a values level anyway. Like, I couldn't work with someone that didn't align with me in terms of values. If I thought someone was doing recruitment in a not ethical way, that wouldn't work for me, even if they were making loads of money. If they treated people a certain way or spoke to people a certain way, it wouldn't work. So I think that the values piece and cultural piece is always going to blend in. I don't think you have to mold all of your cultures together. When I look at our leaders around the world, they're all very different and they've all built their own cultures locally. If you walk into one sort of office and another sort of office, you don't think, oh wow, this is the same office. Every leader has put their own spice on it.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to update you on what it is I actually do all day, apart from the RAG podcast, of course. Now, most of you know from the episodes that I am the founder of Hoxo, right? What you probably don't know is that we're currently working with over 250 recruitment agencies and over 4,000 of their recruiters around the world in every continent, and helping these businesses brand themselves and the people in the company better. Now, we have built a creative team over the last 6 years that helps manage the creation of new agency brands. Obviously, a lot of the listeners in the RAG are starting their businesses for the first time. But more often than not, we rebrand tired companies. So many businesses we work with are smashing it when it comes to revenue and performance, but their website and their online story was built back when they started for like 500 quid, and it just does not represent who they are today. So we believe getting that right building a brand becomes your anchor. Now, every good brand also needs traffic, right? You need people to see it, to come to the website, see you online, and that's where your people come in. So we work to either manage the personal brands of your team, or we can teach you how to build the brand yourselves. All of it is designed to give you consistency on LinkedIn that helps you stand out from the competition, show your personality, show and add value, and ultimately make more money. Now, I personally speak to potential new customers along with my business partner, Amma. So I would love to spend some time with you, my RAG listeners that I potentially don't even know yet. Any of you that are interested in building a brand that's fit for purpose in 2023 and beyond, come and speak to us. Just click the link in the show notes, fill in the form, and we will be in touch with you within 48 hours to book a 30 minutes video call ASAP. Right, back to the show. When it comes to things like the office, do you try and make them look similar? Like, because I know some companies go with like WeWork everywhere, so they make that you can literally drop into one office and it feels like you're in the same. Do you make them like that, or do you keep them unique? What's your strategy?
Yeah, we do. So we've got a brilliant design team, and our designs are always exciting. Whether it's on our website, the brochures, whether it's the stickers for our offices. So yeah, we do try and create a real consistency in terms of the colours, the imagery, and the sort of style that we go for. I think that's a real key thing. That's the classic McDonald's thing, isn't it? Wherever you go in the world, you recognise McDonald's straight away. So from a look and feel, yeah, we absolutely do that with the offices.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. It just sounds it'd be really exciting to be in a position to go to a new location like that and build an office and take your vision of what you've already built and see it grow in those places. Like the way we've done South Africa is very different, right? We started in the pandemic. We had a mentor who'd built a marketing agency out there, and we had a few contractors out there, and then it went well. Time zone's brilliant, it's cost effective, really good workers, and then we then went and set up a business and bank account and stuff like that, and now it's all official. We've got WeWork licenses in those regions, so people can go in and co-work in Cape Town, Joburg, Pretoria, London. But we never actually put that office stamp on it, which is it is different. I think I'd enjoy that. When it comes to talent, then in all these regions, is that similar? Are you looking for a similar? How would you describe the recruitment process and the type of people that each region are looking for? Is it all trainees? Is it a mix of experience? What's your attitude there?
So historically, if we look at the way we built certainly the UK business, and then arguably the majority of the other offices as well, is that we've gone for real experts within the universities that we work within. So within digital, we have people heading up, creative, marketing, technology, sales, etc. So we've always gone and looked at, right, who is the best in that location? Who out of our competitors, who out of similar companies is a real weapon in that area, has a good network, and that can come and build something for Salt. So we typically, during our growth periods, went for that type of recruiter. And then even the level down as well, that sort of principal consultant, team leader type level. Again, we've always tried to go after someone in the market that can bring something to Salt and bring some knowledge base to us. I think where we're at now, and again, if you look at whether it's an S3, a Faden, a Robert Half, you look at these companies that are proven entities in the recruitment world in terms of growth and scale, they do it through the trainee model. And I think that's where we're evolving now. We're sort of circa 400 staff now. So obviously our jump now is how do we get to 1,000? I think to do that, we're not going to do that by going out there and hiring, a load of directors and a load of principal consultants. We need to get the future piece right. And that very much fits in with our vision of creating futures and what we've invested in over the last few years. So during the pandemic, we hired someone to head up our global learning and development programs, and within that integrate academy setups. So we did an academy in London last year. We're doing one in Reading. We've done a couple now in Cape Town, and we want to get that model proven. We're a year or so into these models, so we're not expecting instant success overnight. This is something we've got to stick with and we've got to persist with. But if you look at the sort of locations around the world, we are in major cities, whether it's a New York, a Sydney, a Toronto, a London, a Manchester. So we are in places where there's great universities, there's lots of young talent coming through. So we want to do more and more to bring young talent through. We launched something on our website as well this year. It's called Educating Futures. That's something that myself and our marketing director are working on. We are both trustees on a local academy of schools. So we're looking further at actually how can we integrate communities from a younger age? How can we get people becoming more aware of the jobs within the digital world, about globalization, about understanding their parents' careers more as well. So they're not being this school and work divide and this parent and child divide. How can children sit with their parents on the Salt website and have some gamification and learn about their future and the jobs that are out there as well. So we definitely see the future growth of our organisation, that next doubling in size, being through nurturing talent.
And that makes sense. Perfect sense. Honestly, though, what's been the biggest challenge? You've been running it, like you say, for a year or so. I'm sure you've had mixed success. What's the hardest thing? Because it makes logical sense. You grow to a certain point and then you just have to develop your own. Like you have to. It's not a choice to get to that sort of scale. But what's the honest reality of doing that in the early days? What's been the biggest challenge?
So I'd say a couple of things. I'd say, I'd say culturally, one of the things that we've really worked on as an organisation that's been a get-go objective from a board meeting and from a global launch point of view every year is, we look very acutely at our attrition levels. So, we don't want to be a company that is, hire quickly, get rid of quickly, put people through 12-week academies, but be chopping them after 2 or 3 weeks. We don't want to do that. That is the reality, though, of these types of schemes. If someone is on a 12-week program and 4 weeks into that, they're not showing the sort of skills and traits and behaviours that you're looking for, unfortunately, you're going to have to make exits. So the challenge is we'd worked so hard to get our attrition to a certain point, because with high growth, you do get higher attrition.
Yeah.
But we were really proud of where our attrition was last year. Introducing the academies, we saw that obviously it was going to have an effect on that. So that's one challenge, and maintaining that reputation on the market, whether it's the Glassdoor reviews and how much notice you take of these things. At the end of the day, you want good feedback on your company, and everyone has an individual experience, and you don't want people to have negative experiences around your brand, whether that's from a customer or an employee point of view. The other challenge is something you said you wanted to come on to a bit later, I guess, are the economic headwinds. So, ideally, when you do these things, you have to keep them going. You can't start them, right? So once you kick off one, you do a 12-week program. Really, you want to be lining up the next 12-week program as well. And then once you've got that right, you then want to take it to other locations. So, like I say, we started in London, Reading. We'd ideally like to be having them going on in Manchester, in Rio, in Cape Town, in Joburg, and all these other locations as well. So at the moment, there is a global caution when it comes to hiring, both from recruiters and the customers that we're working with as well. So I guess we haven't had those, we haven't had the conditions where we can really set sail with what we want to do around the academies.
So let's move into that then. That's all. Again, it all makes sense, mate. What is the reality of the conditions that you're seeing from a bird's eye view across all of your locations?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is 2021. I don't think any of us expected to have the year we had in 2021 after the lights going out somewhat in 2020.
Yeah.
2021 was ridiculous, and I think in 2021 what we did is lots of recruitment companies had very good years, but quite lean because everyone had leaned up during the pandemic. There was still the furlough schemes till I think October that year. I think they ran up in some way, shape, or form, whether people were using them or not. So I think all of our egos were probably inflated somewhat in 2021 with what we produced.
Yeah.
In 2022, many of us would have built budgets based upon 2021's growth rate and 2021's profit rate. So lots of hires were put into 2022 budgets, but lots of growth was also put in there as well. And there was the war for talent, first half of 2022, which is why it was good for recruiters, because companies were all trying to hire and overhiring, which has been shown with the redundancies from the big companies, which we can come on to. But, we all hired lots early on in 2022. I mean, I think we hired, I'm going to say between 80 and 100 people in the first half of last year alone across the various locations. So with all of that hiring, with all of that extra expenditure, you're then hoping that in H2, all of that hiring comes to fruition. But then what happened in H2 2022 is everyone had a lot more staff, a lot more costs, but then there was a slow. It did start slowing in various locations. Like with the pandemic, we saw the quickest slow in the US. It really was quite dramatic. US was ahead of budget halfway through the year last year. And then the second half of the year was not their best second half they've had. The UK probably didn't start slowing down again until later in the year, to be honest.
Yeah.
And various other speeds in other locations as well. I think we can't put all the locations into one global economy box.
Has there been anywhere that hasn't been affected yet that's remain consistent?
I'd say that the Middle East almost live in their own bubble somewhat in some respect, especially because of the rise of Saudi and the amount of money. I mean, if you follow any of the Saudi press, you'll see all the economic trends and expenditure that they're putting out there. So every location is unique and has its own different nuances. Obviously in Australia and New Zealand, they have their big holiday at Christmas. So they don't really get going until February, maybe even into March. Even in Brazil, they have their main holiday around Christmas, and then they have Carnival mid-February, so there's a slowdown there. So again, they don't really get going until late February, March. So everywhere has their own nuances. But going back to, I guess, the economic trends last year, we definitely started seeing the slow off in Q4 last year. So October, November, December, you start to see that slow. There was a lot of questioning in terms of, well, is this just normal seasonal trends again? As humans, we forget and we adapt very quickly. Is this just what 2019 was like? So you start looking back at the data, back at the trends, trying to ignore the COVID years and then ignore the years after. But then how many years do you start ignoring and when do you start setting new trends? Came back in January, and January was okay, and then you sort of expected to start building upon that, maybe do 10% more in February, maybe 10-15% more in March, but we didn't see that happening. Whilst we saw a bottoming out of activity levels, recruitment KPIs, probably in February, slight sort of start rise in March, but then a sort of stagnation again in April. So when you look at the raw stats, I would say we aren't seeing the major change yet in terms of when you look at the raw stats. If I go to more of the emotive stuff and the feeling-based stuff and the knowledge-based stuff, we're having loads of amazing conversations with customers now. Stuff that was coming through is now coming through, and that's in all of the locations as well. So, in the here and now, definitely seeing a bump up, and then whether you read reports or not, Bank of England are saying, now we're probably not going to go into a recession, but it changes every 6 weeks, doesn't it? Depending on what the journalists want to write about out there.
100%. What metrics at a high level are you looking at? I imagine you have to have some kind of cockpit at your level to have all the offices. You can't know the detail about everyone at all times, but there must be some numbers that I don't need the detail of the number as in what you're making or anything, but what are the metrics you look at the CEO level across multiple offices that enable you to know what levers to pull and push and what you need to do?
So look, we look at many data sets depending on who we're talking to. So myself, our CFO, my chairman, we've just had our board meeting with Sean and Jackie over in APAC this morning. And of course, for that, we're looking at the very high level numbers that you would expect in a board report in terms of, invoiced NFI, written business within the month. We're looking at attrition levels. We look at our NPS scores continually as well. Are we pleasing for those that don't know, Net Promoter Score, it's effectively rating customer experience. We are looking at our jobs filled ratios. So, that's the sort of top helicopter view, high level stats that we would look at. I do daily scrums with various levels of the organization. So 3 times a week, I catch up with all my UK and European directors. I catch up with James in the US, if not every day, every other day. Rick in Dubai and I will have a twice weekly chat. And again, we'll dive into any stats that we feel we need to analyze at that particular point. We have our recruitment dashboard. So whether we need to look at, vacancies that week, CVs going out the door, interviews being booked, we know where we should be. We know if we're booking 100 interviews, as an example, that should roughly equate to 100 grand's worth of revenue. So, on different days, depending on who I'm talking to, I'll look at different stats. But I'm very stat driven. through, and I said this to someone the other day, through all the mindfulness, the self-care, the yoga and all the different things that you can bring into an organization, you can't ever get lost in an organization from the data. The data doesn't lie. The data is the truth of what comes out of the business at the end of the month. And I've never lost sight of the detail that you need on your numbers in a recruitment business.
You mentioned before about the emotional, like the data says one thing, and then you've got the emotional conversations that tells you that there's good quality conversations happening, roles are coming. How long do you allow the emotional conversation to have an impact on decisions until the data? What I'm trying to say is, how long would a business unit or business line be underperforming when they're telling you things are coming before you then have to act? Is there do you have anything that you work towards there?
Yes, it's a beautiful question, Sean, because I think that's exactly where we are at as a business right now, where we are looking at things. We've got, and again, you can't blanket all of the locations. Every location works differently. So with the US as an example, because the salaries are so high and the fees are so high, you can literally go from zero to hero overnight. So I think with the US, you can look at a few tricky months, but you can go, it only takes 2 or 3 good months and suddenly you're well back in the game. If you look at other business units, so if you look at creative freelance in the UK as an example, that's a very high volume based business, but very low fees.
Yeah.
So again, you can go from, a business unit can have 100 runners, in 2 months time it can have 150 runners, but it's very volatile as well. So I think you have to assess what market they work within, the size of fees within it, the tenure of the recruiters that they've got within it. Obviously, if you're dealing with something new and volatile, you've got 10 people that have all been hired within a 6-month period in a new location into a new market and it's not performing, then there's a high risk involved there. Whereas with other business units, you can almost swallow it for a period because whilst you may have a quiet quarter, historically over a 5-year period, that P&L has got good consistency in terms of what it can do. So a number of things that you will have to look at, but it is something you have to decloud your head from every day. You do have to, remove yourself from the emotive sections of it. And I do get to a point with various levels of my leadership team, and I will say to them on a call, listen, guys, let's forget the qualitative side of what we're doing. Let's just look at the data and tell me what is going on. Because that's all we can work with now. The qualitative build-up conversations, it's the coming conversations, it's the coming. If you keep clouding yourself with those, you won't face the reality of what's going on and you won't have acute decision-making around what you need to do. So, yeah, like I say, different times for different locations, but it's something that we constantly have to be aware of.
And how does it affect you now? Because you're in the UK, you're traveling around the world, but you've invested in all these decisions to build it. How much does it weigh on you and affect you personally when there is a challenging month or a difficult unit or country location?
I said this to my chairman the other day. I think you had this initial, period where maybe you're waking up at night a couple more times than you normally would. And, it takes a little bit longer to get back to sleep. I think, personally, I have a sort of maybe a week of that, maybe even just a few days. But then you have to find another way. You can't just sit around, looking at the clock and hoping something will change. So it's about reinvigorating yourself in certain other aspects of the business. So as an example, we don't go from 9 offices to 20 offices over a 3-year period without constantly being on the look for new locations. So a lot of my time can typically be spent networking with people in new regions, new locations, seeing what's out there, seeing where else we can go. When we need to steady things and tighten things up, then I can reinvest all of that time on nurturing people that we have, which I do anyway, but I can spend more time doing that and I can spend more time on customers as well. So then that gives me more of a first-hand control, experience of what's going on and be able to influence decisions and influence customers and, help further grow customers and further nurture staff for us to then be more successful. So it's not something I would tend to worry about, as I say, past those initial couple of days. Maybe drink a little bit less coffee so you're less anxious and, breathe a little bit deeper. But I'm not a worrier by trade, Sean. It's not something that I would let get to me. I wouldn't approach something or attempt something if I didn't feel I could fulfill that.
I think it is one side of being a leader of such a big business, though, that people rarely look at. You know, it's always about the glamour, the growth, the office locations, the revenue, the turnover, whatever. But there is a reality there that having all of that comes with a different job. It's a different level of pressure. It's a different, you know, at any given point, you could get a call from a location with an issue. And it, you know, it's, so I suppose your whole job now is supporting others, and it's making sure that you can be there and help people work through their problems. And when you've got 20 offices, you've got at least 20 people to do that for. So it must take a lot of energy on a daily basis and a weekly basis to be constantly present in the moment and trying to make the right, or help others make the right decision.
Yeah, look, I'm blessed with amazing leaders that we have that are so passionate about the business that we're building. And because of our ownership structure globally, you know, we have multiple people that are significant shareholders in the business. So, you know, there's as much stake in it for them as there is for any of us. So, you know, there's people that are genuinely vested, and I'm privileged to work with those people on a daily basis. And going back to earlier about, you know, aligning with someone's values, whether you're hiring them or whether you're merging with their business, if you've got that values point right, then you can have open, honest discussions with each other. You know, the minute I feel something, is not going right in a relationship, or I feel perhaps someone is going off course a little bit, I'll have that conversation straight away. I'll be very direct. I won't let it fester. So we work in such an open way that, you know, we genuinely have got such a good team of people that are pulled together that I never over worry about someone else. I believe the leaders we've got in place in the locations, yes, I can be there to support them, but they are capable of bringing that region through as well.
So, I mean, without that, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing, right? When it comes to the plans you've got, you mentioned 1,000 people, etc., and the growth of talent. And you also talked about how this year, you know, has not worked out necessarily, or the last 6 months has been a bit challenging. So how does that affect your forecasting of where Salt will be in a year? Like, have you had to reevaluate? Like, what does the next 12 to 18 months look like in light of current economic situation?
I mean, I think we were about 4 weeks into the pandemic, and I got all of the regional leaders to write 3-year business plans. So, you know, despite what was going on, it was all unknown to us, especially only 1 month in. And we wrote those plans on the basis of it didn't matter that COVID had come along, because we were gonna stay on that path that we were on anyway. So whilst the journey might have been a bit different, because we might have dipped a bit here, but then we actually bounced back stronger over here, my philosophy is the same here. Whilst this year so far might not be going where we need it to do, I believe that if we keep the footprints that we have, we keep the right people that we have in those locations to move the business forward, I feel we will be well positioned when the world is less nervous and sitting on their hands and worried about what might happen or what might not happen. I feel we will be there to, you know, really move forward within the market. So I don't see any major adjustments at this point, not after, you know, 1 quarter that hasn't gone the way we wanted it to. Even if I look at last year, you know, our best year ever last year, and I would say it was a tale of 2 halves. I'd say an amazing first half, an all right second half when you put all the different office locations into it. Some were good, some were not so good, some were poor, but you put it all together, but we still moved forward as an organisation. So I still feel we can move forward this year. And I think coming into next year, I think we'll be in a clear year, and hopefully all of the doom and gloom behind us.
Let's hope so. So what are we looking at? Have you got a specific target around growth this year? Do you have, like, this is where we want to be at the end of the year?
So we have very acute budgets that we work to. I think anyone sitting here right now saying that, you know, they're going to smash their budgets this year in recruitment, look, fair play to them if they are. I mean, there's some energies, I think, more on the sort of green tech and renewable energy side of things that I think probably would be ahead of their numbers right now. Where we're at right now, will we get there? No, I mean, we've had our board meeting today. Headcount isn't at the point where we'd set it out to be, but that's been a proactive choice in terms of we haven't wanted to commit to all those extra hires until we know where we are globally from a customer base point of view and where the world is point of view. But I still believe there's enough opportunity out there to keep growing regardless of the nervousness in the market. So we're navigating those new areas of the markets. Whilst we may have been, focused on those two sectors over here, we're now looking more at these 2 or 3 sectors over here because we see that they are still booming. So we're definitely going through a pivoting process right now in some of the locations across different industries. But I'm still optimistic about what this year can bring to us.
I'm interrupting today's episode to tell you about our sponsor, Recruit Hub. What I want to talk about today is someone very, very close to me and Hoxo. You might know Aaron Hawthorne. Aaron worked for us for over 2 years, and he finished in January 2023 to launch his own recruitment company, IXL. Interestingly, when Aaron told me late last year he was launching, I was super proud of him. But I was even more excited for him when he told me he was doing it with Recruit Hub. So Aaron had always wanted to run a recruitment company, joined Hoxo in the pandemic, was amazing as a sales guy for us, building brand, totally adopted our methodologies. But there was clearly an itch he had to scratch to go out there and see if he could build his own business. The reason he chose Recruit Hub is because they had so much experience, guidance, support that could guide Aaron through the process, but also take the pressure off his shoulders. He focuses on recruitment, fully supported by their finance, their operations teams. They've also got discounts and a full tech stack that he plugged into from day one. I know from Aaron, because he's my mate and I worked with him for so long, that he's actually performing really well. So he started at the beginning of 2023, he's billed over £30,000, and he's just texted me this weekend actually saying he secured another deal. A lot of it came from the Hoxo Academy processes, which is exciting. But the truth is, he's loving it. He's billing, he's making money, he's profitable, and he's feeling supported, which is honestly, I think if you're on your own and you want to launch a recruitment company, you could do it on your own. Of course you could, but it's a pretty lonely place. Doing it with Recruit Hub, there's 70 other businesses in the UK, US, and UAE that you're part of a community of. There's any question you need to have answered will be answered through that community. So if you're thinking about launching your own business, why not go and check out Aaron's story? You can do that by going to recruithub.com/case studies/launch stories IXL. You can see the link attached to this episode. Right, let's get back to the rec. And what I'm really interested in with you is like, why are you trying to do this? So like in 3.5 years, you've come out of a pandemic and you've doubled the business, right? So you're now a completely different company, but you still got this ambition to get to it, like 1,000, right? Where does this drive come from? Like, why are you so? Because you don't need to do it, right? You're at a point in your life where you could probably chill out a little bit. You could probably sit on it. You could do different things. Like, where does your fire to still go every day come from, do you think?
When you see the value that you continue to create going into new locations, setting up new offices, nurturing people. We have so many people across the world now that have been with Salt for decades plus. And you look at the impact we've had on those people's lives as well, in terms of building families, homes, careers, fulfilling dreams and goals. When you live in a place where all of that is going on, it's continually fulfilling. I don't ever feel that I'm in BAU. There's always something exciting that you can be doing. I feel blessed to work in recruitment. I think we have one of the best jobs on the planet. The fact that, we work with people to help fulfill their dreams and goals. And I think if you can bring that purpose into your brand, I mentioned the Educating the Futures piece earlier on. If you're continually looking at your brand and your organization and how you can fulfill the purpose and passions that you can bring as an individual and that you can see transpires through your people, if you're continually investing in that, then you're investing in something that's really wholesome and deep, and that can never get too boring. You might get to a stage in your life where you run out of energy to do that. Maybe I underestimate the energy that it takes to do all of these things. For me, it just feels natural. But ask me in 5 years' time, and I might feel differently. But right now, it all just feels purposeful. It feels natural. it complements other things that I do in my life. I mentioned earlier, I sit on the local academy of 6 schools. So I get to hear about the development of local kids and some of the challenges that schools have. I can try and help and give ideas and bounce ideas within that. We've brought ideas from that into our Educating Future section of our website. I coach my son's football team, so I get to work with a load of young boys every week and see them grow and develop. And the things that you learn in the business world and the things that you learn from being a leader, you say these things to these kids and they take it all in. Like, I'll tell the kids to get an early night and eat some pasta and vegetables before bed and drink lots of water. And their parents will come up to me in the next match and they'll say, our little lad, he had an early night and he ate his pasta and he ate his carrots and he did all those things that you said you wanted to do. And it's the wisdom that you can bring as a leader. It doesn't matter where you've learned your leadership skills, whether it's as a parent, as a friend, as a partner, as a child, all these things that you can bring to the party, to be relaying those off, knowing that they are the right things to do in life. For me, that just can't get old, to impart wisdom on all these different people and all these different places. And that's what really transpires through me when I think about setting up an office and I meet someone that has the same values that I do. And I think all these beautiful things that we've done at SALT around diversity and inclusion and mindfulness and culture and social communities and bringing people together, to do that and see the SALT print on that, that brings a lot to me.
Love it. What, in terms of your life and getting to the offices, how often are you at home and out and about? Like, what's your strategy and structure around that?
Yeah, so I guess I got into a nice routine during COVID, as a lot of us did, with being outdoors a lot more. And I was training out in the garden every day and going for lovely bike rides. And I thought, I'll continue this forever, all this lovely outdoorsness. I think last year and I say 2021, I definitely carried on all the outdoorness. Last year, I was into my routine. I love dropping my kids to school every day. I wouldn't let anything take that away from me. I'm then on my first call each day by 9 o'clock. I go to my local gym, club, hotel that I'm a member of around here. So I go and work there in the mornings. That's my quiet place, but I like being around and seeing other people.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to just sit here in one of my rooms at home, whether it's in my office or the garden or something, because I like to people watch. I like to have things going on around me, but I don't want someone knocking on my door every 5 minutes asking if they can have some of my time. And when I used to go into the London office, that would happen all the time. Even people sort of, waving through, and it's lovely to connect and have those people around. But I do work well in isolation. I say in isolation, but I'm always speaking to people.
Yeah, you're on Zoom all day.
I'm not disturbed, but I've got my routine set out. I've got my calls back to back. So all the various.
So are you at home most of the time then, and in your local vicinity, and then
my local vicinity, in my local vicinity, yeah. And then I typically come into London for various meetings. We pop in for our various board meetings, director catch-ups, etc. I'm due to go back out to Dubai in a few weeks' time. Managed to get to the Netherlands last year. Was in New York last year. Was in Dubai. I'm desperate to get back out and see the guys in South Africa. We've gone from 15 people to 70 plus people in South Africa since the last time I was there. So yeah, I'd love to bounce around the offices. Never been to the Toronto office. Never been to the Austin office. I was in Rio earlier this year, completing the acquisition there. So got to meet all of our lovely Brazilian staff. We've got about 15, 16 guys across Brazil there now. So look, it's fantastic getting out to the offices. But I connect so much with people via video. For me, a day on video is just kind of normal. I feel like, sometimes when I see someone face to face, I go, when did I last see them in the flesh?
Yeah.
And I can never remember, but it's like I see them all the time. Like I've got people that I've been chatting to on video for the last 3 years, and I've never met them in person, but I feel I know them so well. You do. If I met them, I wouldn't know if I'd actually shaken their hand or not.
Well, I mean, we've still not been together as a company in one place ever. We never there's never been a scenario where everyone's been together. So we're flying the UK business out to South Africa in June, which is not the best weather for that, but the South African business is bigger than the UK now. So we've got about, I think, 12 in the UK, a couple in Portugal, and then about 20, early 20s in South Africa. So we're all going to Cape Town at end of June, which is going to be it's going to be amazing to be together. But like you, because I am in isolation as well, but I'm on calls. I might be on an Australian call in the morning, an American call later, and everything else in between. I very rarely have a day of isolation. Like I'm always speaking to someone. I'm always seeing someone face to face. So I need that little bit of time in between meetings to go and, decompress, go outside, make a drink, walk the dogs without someone asking me questions. I actually don't know if I could operate the way I do in an office. I don't think I could 5 days. It just wouldn't work for me anymore.
Yeah, look, even when I used to go into London, I had 2 or 3 hotel spots near the office that I would go to simply because of that. So when I look back, probably the last, 2 or 3 years of my time going into the office 3 or 4 days a week, I was probably only in the office 30% of the time anyway, because I was in a hotel down the road somewhere in my own space.
How important do you think it is for leaders, especially CEOs, to think, to give themselves to kind of diarize time to think?
Thinking time is important. I mean, I started diarising. I used to call it my creative zone. I used to put a 90-minute slot in my diary. I started doing this in about, I don't know, maybe 2014. I think I started doing this. Is
that once a week or once a day?
No, every day.
Every day, right.
Every day, a period where you can just breathe, because as a leader, you amalgamate and accumulate so much information. Every call, every session, every meeting, you're accumulating information. And if you're not allowing that information to sink in, to hit the places it needs to hit, and also as well, just to filter out some of the information, because you hear a lot of white noise as well. I was talking earlier about the qualitative conversations versus the quantitative conversations. You hear a lot of stuff. And if you're hearing a lot of stuff not backed up by the data, what is it you're listening to? You're listening to hope, but not reality. So you need time to sieve out this information. And that's where the great ideas come from. Sure, we all have those moments out on a dog walk or a stroll or in the middle of the night or in the gym, wherever it is, and that idea pops up. I've got to write that down. I've got to WhatsApp that to myself. I need to record that information. So I still get into the gym every day at midday, every single day without fail. Unless I'm on meetings in London, I'm in the gym. And, my yogic training taught me how to breathe. And that's the key thing each day. It's taking those deep breaths. That's how we slow down. That's how we connect with self. So when I'm in the gym, I'm continuously, doing my breath work. I do my breath work when I wake up every single morning as well. So I'm allowing time to, really connect with who I am, how I'm feeling. And that helps me make decisions based upon the things that I'm hearing and seeing each day. So
what's the routine then? Go through without the individual detail of what you like, from waking up through to finishing. So you don't, it's not a training morning for you. It's not you don't go to the gym in the morning. You go at lunch.
No, it's a midday train. It's a midday train. I love the morning to connect at home and be a dad and a husband and wake up. And like I say, to wake up calm. I think, those days, you still see it in the films and TV programs as well, where someone wakes up and they're barely out the shower and they're biting a bit of toast and they're running out the door and they're shouting goodbye to everyone. It's just, whoa. You're starting your day in chaos, and so many of us did that for so many years. And I look back sadly upon all those times where my kids were barely awake, and I'd go and give them a kiss goodbye, and I'd run out the house before they've even got up to sit there and have their cornflakes with daddy, and all those things there. So my morning routine is very much about having breakfast, help the kids get ready, make the kids lunches with my wife, and prepare for the day. And whilst I'm doing that, don't get me wrong, of course, my head is ticking over and I'm planning, and I know what my first meeting is and what I should be thinking about that and what that next meeting is. So the brain is getting in check, but it's doing it in a less chaotic way. I drop the kids to school. I go to my place. I do my morning of calls, typically have 4 or 5 calls in the morning scheduled through, whether it's team scrums or individual catch-ups. And then I've got my time at lunchtime to go to the gym, decompress, think about what's gone on, think about any actions that I might need to take and make, but just have a little bit of time away from the screens. Massively try and avoid being one of those gym goers that carries the phone around the gym with them. Leave the phone in the bag and just be there. Come home for some lunch, and then the rest of my afternoon is done at home. So that's where my next windows of course.
I like your routine. I think I'm kind of working on mine, because I I went through a period of training at lunch, and then I went through a period of probably being. I think I went so heavy into our sales process so that I was actually then people were just trying to chip into that time, and I was guilty of saying, well, yeah, if it's another client, then I'll do it. And so I started training in the morning and getting there for 6 o'clock and making so that there was no way I could lose that time in the gym. But then I lost the time with the family as much, like you said. Like this morning, I got up. I was in the gym at 6:30. I was home by 7:15. My wife doesn't get up till 7:30. The kids don't leave because we were right next to the school, so they don't leave till 8:30. So I did still got some time with them, and I'd got my gym done. And now at lunch, I'm not thinking about it. But do you ever have that where like things can happen in the morning that would stop you going to the gym, or are you like, no, it's not getting in the way?
No. It's I've been in this routine. I still train it today throughout the organisation, and people that have been with Salt for a number of years know my time management training session very well, and I've been consistent with it since the get-go. For me, that 9 till 12, 2 till 5, it's the PST, the peak selling time, if you like. It's those 2 periods of the day. They're the 2 periods that you prep and plan for in the morning. Doesn't matter whether you're a recruiter with 1 year's experience or you're a leader with 20 years experience, right? They're the periods where the world is actionable. Yeah, there's time zone borders and all the rest of it, but basically the majority of what you do is within those periods. So if you are rigid and routine within those periods, that's 6 hours in a day where you've got solid activity. And I believe that many more hours over that for a human, you're going to start to burn out anyway. And, running an international business, as you know, you and I, of course, we're going to have to do calls with APAC at 7 in the morning sometimes, or I'm going to speak to James in the US at 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, whatever it may be. You're going to have the odd times where you have to do these things. But generally, if you're setting the agenda of those times and you let everyone else know that that's the times you're available, that's what you do, and that's when you do it. Don't let people eat into your time, because your self-care time is as important as your meeting time. Like, why is a coffee meet with a new client or a new candidate more important than you taking some downtime? It's not. If you don't take that downtime, you can't be your best version. And I want to be my best version on every call.
What happens is it eats you up in a different way, and it affects you like later on, doesn't it? Like you'll skip it, you'll do that call, and then you'll be a bit of an arse with your family later. Like you'll be a bit moody at dinner or something. I've noticed it like translates or it comes out as a different symptom at a different time, and I'm like, that's because I let myself be taking, like I let someone else take over my time. And I do have 12 till, I have the same as you. I have like 8:30 till 12, 12 till 2 is in the blocked out the diary. Don't book in, but people still try. And then I have the till about 6. So I have 2 till 6. But again, by the time the kids get back at 4, 5, it's not till 6 anymore, because there's, my wife might cook by 5:15. And that's the bit that sometimes I feel guilty to the business. I don't know if you've ever felt that, because I used to be on till 7 when I was single, or when I was,
I think we all go through those periods, and I think we all kid ourselves that, chaining ourselves to a desk, we're going to be more effective, right? But actually, if you think about a game of chess, in a game of chess, you'll think for minutes before you make a move. And in fact, you've already played out that game in your head before you've even played that game, because you've seen that move, you've seen that, combination of pieces before. So in chess, it's not the amount of times that you move that you're getting paid for, you're winning for. It's making that right move. And that's what we have to do as leaders. We have to make that right move. It might take you an hour to make the right decision, but you're better off spending an hour to make the right decision than making 5 decisions in an hour that actually are going to mess your business up. I remember in my early days of when we were first globalizing the business, I remember going on trips to Sydney, and I would literally map out my week Monday to Friday, and I'd have my first meeting at 7:30 in the morning, and my last one would be at 6:30 at night. And I remember one day flying from Sydney to Melbourne, getting like the plane at like 5 in the morning, and I was meeting with this digital program manager, and it must have been about 5 o'clock in the evening. I was so tired, I was looking at him just thinking, I want to sleep on your lap, but that's going to be inappropriate. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay awake, and I'm going to get through this. And it was just like, how effective was I? I was blurring through half my meetings. It just wasn't effective. So I rescinded that back, and I just said, when people are with me, they want the me that they're going to get something out of. They want the me that's going to be full of energy, full of ideas, full of buoyancy. Whether that's 3 minutes of my time or 30 minutes of my time, it's got to be effective. Yeah. So I don't feel, you should never feel guilty as a leader as to working around the life that you have, because if you're not having that life to fulfill you spiritually, then you're not going to be your best person for the people that you're leading.
No, what's the point? Like, what are you working so hard for? Yeah, I do get it. I'll be sat eating tea at 5. Well, we call it tea again now. I live back up north, but at 5:15, and I'll be like, because my business partner's got no kids, he'll be still working. The team are probably still working, so I'm like, am I letting them down? And then I have to say to myself, no, because I'll jump back on later anyway. I'll do something later if I need to. I'm in a really interesting phase now where, because the baby's coming, I've said to myself, I'm getting out of the sales process. Like I have to. I'm too. It's not going to grow anymore. It's not going to move. The business won't move forward if I'm still on 6-7 sales calls a day. It just won't work. Even though I love it, I enjoy it, and I'm good at it. It's not sustainable. So I'm back at that point where, I'm at that point where I think a lot of recruitment owners find themselves. Which again, I think you would have left that point a long time ago. You're very strategic. You've always invested in talent around you. But I think if we can, a bit of advice for people that might be more like me right now, that are still kind of the rainmaker in their own business. Have you got any words of wisdom or any thoughts around how you can confidently take yourself to a level of running a business, not being the main source of income for that business, and panicking in the last week of the month to do deals and things like that?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's the classic, going right back to the billing manager syndrome, isn't it? And we always say to our billing managers, what you're doing there is the hardest job. You've got to sustain a desk and build, 250, 300 grand yourself in the UK. And you've got to start building and nurturing a team around you as well. That is that tough period. But then, when you get to that level where you've got 8, 10, 12 people there, and you can truly focus on people development and management, the job does get a bit easier again. It becomes more strategic, more, customer centric, customer focused, dealing with larger clients, and then nurturing and training your people, which hopefully, if you're doing that job you love, there's many different ways you can look at it. I know some leaders that race to the top because they don't love the selling, and they don't necessarily even love the people development side of things. They want to build an empire. They want to run it, but actually they don't like some of those more hands-on aspects of the job. Yeah, I can only speak from my personal experience, and I still love all the hands-on aspects of the job. I still love putting my talent acquisition hat on, especially when we go into a new location. I want to speak to and meet the people that we're going to hire. I want to see those first boots on the ground. I'm constantly networking with future leaders of the business anyway. I very quickly, as I mentioned earlier, adapt my time from looking at acquisitions to looking at customer acquisition. So I think, some of us do move away from those things. Some of us integrate that into what we do. I don't think there's a rule for that. I've interviewed a few people recently, and they've said to me, I'm very people focused, but I haven't done the commercial part for 2 or 3 years. And it's like, well, you haven't had to, because the market's been so busy, the work's been landing on your lap. And I think there's a real danger for those people. And I've said this to them as well. You're losing those commercial tools. It's going to make you less employable to some people, because, especially in a market like this, you have to have those commercial skills. Yeah. If you're only doing half the job, that's a real risk as a recruiter right now. So I would say to all leaders, whether you're running 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, 500 people, is you've got to stay rounded. You've got to stay connected with your people. You hear and read about great leaders gone by that, founded an incredible business, and they still walk the factory floors. They still go and connect with every level of the organization, so they understand all those processes and what's going on. And I feel you have to be. So I think, you do as you feel best for your leadership styles, but I think the more rounded leaders we can be, the more value we can add to our people.
I think it's just putting the building blocks and the strategy in place to find some elevation, because it can be so tempting to just stay in that commercial for the billing manager, for the recruitment owner of 10 staff, for me, because our business is we've got 40 people, but 35 of them, 37 of them are delivering the products, and then there's only 3 of us at the front that bring the clients on. it's really tempting to stay in that comfortable zone of making money than trying to develop others, trying to step up, trying to do both things. I've got a challenge now. I've got an exciting challenge.
Yeah, but flipping it, that might be that might be your forte. You might get someone to come in and do the other bits. I've heard of other great businesses over the years where the founder, the CEO of that business is still the breadwinner of that business, and they've hired in very good operational people around them as well. So yeah, there's definitely no one size fits all with it, and I think we have to stay with what we love doing. We have to love those aspects of the role. We have to, if we let go of the things that we love doing within the business, then we're going to lose some passion for what we're doing there.
That's true. Elliot, we've run out of time, but I could carry this on for a long time. I appreciate you taking the time for the third time. I reckon we're going to have an episode 4 at some point. I hope you do achieve the things you're looking to achieve. I've got no doubt you're going to continue on this growth journey. I asked you this last time. I'll ask you again. If anyone is listening who likes your approach and just wants to pick your brains, whether it be to do with the business, whether it be to do with your personal stuff, because I know you do a lot in the mindfulness space, and you give sound advice. Are you open to people reaching out on LinkedIn via
yeah, and they did last time as well, Sean. So thanks for the plug. But always happy to connect with people, to reach out. I'm very active online, as you know. It's always great meeting new people, speaking to new people. So where the time and synergy is there, I'm always happy to connect.
Legend. We'll get you back on again soon. Appreciate it.
Nice one, Sean.
Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. I'll see you soon.